Hi everyone, my name is Nicola and I'm the Communications Coordinator at TechSoup Canada. I'd like to welcome and thank you all for joining us today for today's webinar on how Office 365 can help your nonprofit. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly introduce you to TechSoup Canada. Our mission is to help nonprofits using technology effectively, and we try to accomplish this in two ways. The first is to make technology products more affordable through our Technology Donations Program. So we partner with corporations such as Microsoft, Adobe, and Symantec and offer their products as a donation or at a significant discount for charities, nonprofits, and libraries in Canada. As you can imagine, the cost savings can become quite significant, especially if you're purchasing software for your entire staff. So creating a TechSoup Canada account is free, so if you'd like more information, please visit our website at techsoupcanada.ca/getting started. The second way we try to help nonprofits use technology effectively is by creating and curating nonprofit tech resources. So we write blogs, curate content on our social media, and host events and webinars such as this to help nonprofits learn more about the technologies that can help them in their day-to-day work. So if there's a topic that you'd like to learn about, please let us know. TechSoup Canada is also part of a global network that serves over 60 countries worldwide. If you have a friend or a nonprofit in your network that is located outside of Canada, let them know that there's a TechSoup office nearby willing to help them with their tech needs. Lastly, we are a small nonprofit based out of Toronto, and we are a program at the Centre for Social Innovation. So for today's webinar, you can use the GoToWebinar panel on your right-hand side to answer your questions, chat with us, or change your audio settings. Just a reminder that you are on mute, so if you have any questions or concerns, chat to us in the question box and we'll do our best to help. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's guest speakers. We have Jamie, our product manager from Microsoft Canada, Aldwin, a senior manager at Canadian Cancer Society, Kevin, who's the VP of Virtualization and Cloud at MessageOps, and myself and Joyce from TechSoup Canada. So for today's agenda, we'll cover what is Office 365, then we'll learn about how Canadian Cancer Society uses Office 365, as well as learn about the next steps for migration, and we'll end with a Q&A session. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the control over to Jamie.
Thanks very much, and thanks to everyone who's joined the call today. As Nicola mentioned, my name is Jamie Sergente, and I'm a product manager within the Office 365 portfolio here at Microsoft Canada. I also want to thank our fellow speakers and, of course, TechSoup for hosting us. We've got a great lineup for you today. What you're going to hear about today has been something that we've been working on for close to 18 months, including the period at which we had this available privately to some of our customers. What we're going to talk about today has been available publicly for almost close to a year. And there's a lot of hard work and a lot of learnings. And part of what today is about is sharing with you guys some of those learnings. And you're going to have great stories and some great content from Aldwin as well as Kevin on what this thing is, how it works inside of an organization, specifically for non-for-profits. And then finally, what you can do next and what you can expect if you were to choose to migrate to Office 365. But before I begin, I wanted to get to know the audience a little bit better. We put together a couple questions, and what this is going to help myself, Aldwin, and Kevin do is kind of orient our presentation to you guys and make sure that we're hitting on the points you care about most. And I'll speak for myself. It's really important to me to understand where you guys are coming from on the phone so that we can actually, really speak to what you care about. So I'm gonna launch the poll. I've never done this before, so I apologize if this feels awkward. I'm selecting my poll. Okay. So I think if I press launch, you guys will see the poll. So what we'll do is we've got approximately on the phone right now 180 folks. So if we get around 50% response, we'll move forward. Right now we're at 54%, 58% and climbing.
Jamie?
And what I can tell you, and I don't know if this is going to work, I'm going to close the poll. We're at 83%. We'll close the poll. And from our side, what I can share with you is we see the following. So more than 2/3 of the folks on the call today
Jamie?
are not yet. Yep.
Could you actually talk closer to the mic? Someone has requested you to be louder.
No problem.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it. So the first thing we learned is that predominantly 2/3 of the folks on the call today aren't actually an Office 365 customer. So you're going to get a lot of great content from this presentation. Let's keep going. We've got 3 more questions to ask the folks on the call. I'm going to go to question number 2. Nicola, close. Oh, my bad. Here we go. Okay, we're going to launch the second question. Thanks for everyone's patience. So this question is around how confident you are in terms of what is Office 365. The questions are as follows. I really know what this thing is. I'm crystal clear. Foggy, I kind of get it, but it's also questions for Microsoft. And then finally, I do not know how this thing works. There's 3 responses. Again, we'll wait till we saw about 80% response rate last question, so I'm going to wait till about 80%. We're at 80% now. I'm going to close the poll. Thank you, everyone, for voting. And what you can see is we've got about a split. Half of the folks on the call are, let's call it foggy. They seem to understand it slightly, and the other half are, completely unclear, which is great. We have great content at a base level. We're going to be very detailed on what this thing is. Third and second last question. Have you started an Office 365 profit trial? One of the things that most of our customers do when they start looking at Office 365 is they start a free trial. I know Aldwin on the phone, that was his first step, and this gives you the opportunity to kick the tires. It's real simple. It's yes or no. We're at 80% response. I'm going to close the poll and share the responses with the audience. And again, we're seeing, almost 80% of the folks on the call who have not yet started the trial, which is great. We're going to talk about how you start a trial as part of this presentation. Okay, last question, then we're going to get into the content. Hide this. Final question. We're going to launch it. Okay. Are you looking for help with Office 365 nonprofit setup? You'll hear at length today some of the stories around putting this thing into practice and in production. We want to know if from the outset you're looking for help so we can, again, tailor our presentation today. We're at around 66%, 70% voted. Poll's going to close in a moment. Get your votes in, folks. All right, I'm going to close the poll. We're close to 80%. Share the responses. And again, over 2/3 of the folks on the call are actually looking for help. And we're going to touch on that at length today. You'll hear some advice from Aldwin. I'll present some next steps on getting help, and you'll hear from one of our partners, Kevin at MessageOps, on what you can do to get help. All right, we're going to go back into the presentation. Could you, Nicola, could you put me into the presentation again? I'll hide this.
Yes, just 1 second.
Thank you.
Hold on, just give us a moment.
I broke it. I can start.
No.
The slides are just going to be a backdrop. I'm sorry, Nicola?
Oh, sorry. No, we're just going to show our application now, so just give us a moment. It should be showing up now. Do you see a screen?
Yes, we can
Perfect.
see the screen. Thank you, Nicola. Okay. So here's the situation. Microsoft's on a mission right now to empower the world, and part of that includes making sure that organizations of all sizes can get stuff done from anywhere. And you'll hear in the press and publicly that we'll talk about this mobile and cloud first world, and how we're trying to empower every organization on the planet to do more. And if you get down to the tactical nature of that goal for nonprofits, it's designed to solve key issues you're facing in your operations, and ultimately helping you achieve your mission. Now, like with any technology, there's a lot of complexity. There's typically complexity, and the complexity results in what we usually find a lot of indecision, and in some cases reduced productivity, or situations or scenarios where the nonprofits that are serving our country are just not able to prioritize investment in technology because of the complexity, and that can slow them down. And so this program is really around addressing those challenges in a really deliberate way, and giving you the capability to do more. And so some of the things that we oriented this solution around include, one, increasingly, and I'm sitting in a room right now with folks from Microsoft, and all of us are holding different devices, and that will be true in your organizations. Increasingly, you're going to have staff or volunteers who show up to work or to an event or to an activation of some kind, and they're going to be using a device that is not the same as the other person beside them. And so there's a multitude of devices, and part of the solution is rooted on making sure that folks can get stuff done from anywhere on virtually any device. And the other aspect we often find is that you're focused on primarily two things. One is the productive work against your mission and making a difference in Canada based on that mission. And the second is most often fundraising and finding money to continue to achieve that mission. And any other type of work is typically a distraction and hard to justify putting time and resources against it. And so the solution is built off that idea. It's around giving you time back and the opportunity to not focus on managing technology. The third thing that we've thought a lot about is, and you'll hear this from Aldwin's implementation at Canadian Cancer Society, I apologize, Canadian Cancer Society, where you're going to have a multitude of satellite offices with folks, and we see this often in Canada, with folks trying to access systems and tools and files and storage and email and maybe even your Active Directory if you're a sophisticated shop. And that's the nature of Canadian not-for-profits. We're a big country with lot of stuff going on with people working all over the country. And so part of the solution is focused on that, giving you the ability to connect those people and give them those connections like they've never had before, and helping them collaborate, and ultimately, again, helping you achieve your mission. And then finally, we often see one of the biggest challenges is even if this is a priority, even if technology or applications or services to support your staff or volunteer is a priority, it's often challenging because you just don't have the folks at the table. And you're going to hear today a story from Canadian Cancer Society, from Aldwin, around how they actually have himself managing technology. But this solution is the solution is built around the idea that there may be folks like Aldwin in that table in the organization, and they're going to have the ability to do amazing things on this platform. But if those things don't exist, and you don't have the resources like an expert like Aldwin in your organization, the technology will also work for you. And it's designed around this idea that it can work in both contexts, a very sophisticated IT implementation or a simple one where you're just trying to do basic things like email, personal file storage, etc. So that's the basis of the challenges we assessed before we decided to go down this track. So what is this thing? Office 365 is made up of two key components. The first is a series of web applications or services that are hosted in the cloud. You may or may not be familiar with these things, but I'm going to talk about what the things they do, the scenarios they unlock, rather than the product names. So at its core, the service includes web conferencing with HD video through Link, or for some of our customers who are in first release, Skype for Business. We're changing the brand there, but this is simply web conferencing in HD video. It also includes business class email, contacts, and calendars, so folks can access core communication in the group at any time. There's file storage and sharing through both OneDrive as well as SharePoint, where you can work on documents together, host them, share them, both with internal and external audiences. And then there's this final component of the Office web apps, where we've taken all of our existing Office suite, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Outlook, Microsoft Word, and we put those in the browser. So regardless of whether or not the end user has Office working on a phone or on their desktop PC or Mac computer, they're able to actually execute work, and they're able to get stuff done if they don't have those applications, and they do that all in a browser. And that's the core of the service. And this service today is free as a donation to anyone on the call. We'll talk about how to do that in a moment, but I want you to just root yourself on that concept, which is these four things: web conferencing and HD video, business class email, contacts and calendars, file storage and sharing, and Office web apps is free from Microsoft in perpetuity. There's no hitch, there's no catch. That's how it's going to work going forward. And there are some eligibility requirements, but generally speaking, not-for-profits across the country who are doing good in the community are going to be able to get these services for free in perpetuity. Now, on top of that, there's some advanced functionality. You heard me say it already, but yes, the core services are available today to any qualified nonprofit as a donation. Again, in perpetuity. There's no hitch, there's no catch. This thing is available at no cost to the folks that are eligible. Now, on top of this, there is some sophisticated, some additional sophistication inside the service. And specifically what this looks like is, in addition to having those core services which are free as a donation, we won't charge you for, we also recognize that sometimes you're going to need additional rich applications, specifically the Microsoft Office suite, on either desktop PCs, Mac computers, or an Android or iPad tablet. And for that, we enable customers across the country with those services, again, delivered to the cloud. Now that may sound weird. Well, how can you give me this rich desktop application or Mac application or even an iPad app delivered to the cloud? What I want you to orient on is these are rich applications, and because they're connected to Office 365's cloud, they're always available to your users from virtually any device. But in addition, they're always up to date. And so what that means, and I'll use one scenario that I've been getting a lot of feedback from our customers on recently. Microsoft just released Microsoft Office 2016 for the Mac platform. If you're a paying customer within this existing offer, and you choose to go the route of going beyond the free donation and adding the Office suite to the subscription, what you get is that new version of Microsoft Office 2016 on the Mac. And that will be true for any time we update that platform, those series of applications. And so because this series of applications is connected to the cloud, it means that you can always trust that they're going to work on virtually any device. But in addition, they're always going to be up to date and be the latest and greatest technology. You maintain that subscription, the applications work, and they get better. And that's the core of what we're talking about today. I want to be clear, and I get this question sometimes, is Microsoft, are we doing this because we want to drive this paid offer? And the answer is no. If I return to my initial comments, the number one thing for us is to make sure that that bottom right-hand corner of the slide, all those free services that are available as a donation, those are what we're unlocking. And you'll hear from Kevin and Aldwin today around how they use those services as a core part of their organization, or in Kevin's case, how customers are using that as a core part of their implementation. And that's the real value. We think the real value happens in those. This additional software suite is up to you, and you'll see from Aldwin on how they prioritize that and what that looked like for them. They didn't go all paid, for example. They did a mix, and we're happy to support you in that as well. I'm going to quickly move to my final slides, and the rest of the presentation is going to focus on what's available to you from a SKU perspective, getting into the tactical SKU model, what would be the next step if you're interested, and then a final conversation around some of our security and privacy investments. I apologize, I can see on this slide that it's not entirely visible, but let me just represent what we're trying to share with the folks on the call today. There's 4 options for you today to take on the service. I want to be clear in that the 2 primary ways in which you would activate this offer from Microsoft is through a trial experience. You go to a web portal, we'll provide the link in a moment, and you enter some personal information from the organization, and then right then you'll get the service working, the full-fledged service. We give you then 30 days to evaluate what you want to do with the service. You can start using it as if it's going to be your long-term solution. It'll be an in-production set of applications and services. Or you can let it die, and if it doesn't work out, we understand. There's no hook or catch to use the free trial. The second thing I want to have on the slide is that you've got these 2 options, and I'm going to try to characterize them in 2 ways. On the right-hand side, you'll see this notion of the Office 365 Enterprise E1 for nonprofits, or E3. This Enterprise suite is kind of the no-limit solution, and this is something that an organization the size of Canadian Cancer Society would unlock, because they've got satellite offices, they've got users, volunteers moving up and down, and they're probably going to be continue to get bigger and bigger because there's no slowing down in that mission. And they're going to be on the right-hand side of the slide. Again, as you saw on the first part of the presentation, or the first part around how we charge for the solution, the E1 suite is free as a donation today. However, if you're looking for advanced functionality like e-discovery for compliance, additional services like Excel access, on-premise server integration, and things like rights management for protected documents, archiving, or legal hold. If you're operating in pretty stringent IT environments with lots of compliance, E3 is going to make sense. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, one of the core pieces of value you'll get on the E3 suite is the Office applications across all your devices. So that's the E suite. Again, think of that as the unlimited, all-you-can-eat buffet. It's got the whole enchilada. You're never going to have to scale up. It's going to work for you forever, and it's going to keep getting better and richer. On the other side, there's a small business aspect to the suite, and you'll see that represented on the slide as Office 365 Small Business for Nonprofits. Now think of this one as a set of applications and services that is almost identical to the Enterprise suite you're going to hear more from Oswald about and what I've just represented. But it's got some limits, and specifically it's limited on users. And so if you know your organization is never going to go above 300 users, this would be your ticket. And again, just like we talked about in the previous slide, all the core services, Office through the browser, email, web conferencing, instant messaging, file storage, administration console, all of that is integrated for free. Those basic services that are going to really unlock a lot of potential for your organization, they're all available as a donation. And then again, if you choose, this is represented through the Small Business Premium for Nonprofits SKU. There's also the Office component. And so you would get the Office suite across any device for virtually across any device for all your users. And that's how we think about it. Again, I'll just summarize. On the right-hand side, you have the Enterprise SKU suite. This is the unlimited all-you-can-eat buffet. If you choose to go the paid model, you're going to get some really advanced functionality plus the Office suite. If you're smaller, you know you're not going to grow beyond 300 users, you've got the option to go for the Small Business Premium SKUs, a Small Business SKU, excuse me. And if you choose to, you could transact against the Premium SKU and get the Office applications as part of your subscription. I want to highlight again that we're not pushing you in either direction. It's not our intention. Both of the free offers are available for a trial. Should you go and activate a trial and prove that you're an eligible nonprofit through the eligibility verification engine, at that point you'll be able to use those services for free in perpetuity. And again, those are the Small Business for Nonprofit SKUs as well as the E1 for Nonprofit SKUs. We get a lot of questions around, okay, what do I do next? As you heard us say, as you heard myself say at length, this is simple. It's really just visiting a web portal, and the URLs listed on the slide, microsoft.ca/O365NFP. What you'll do is you'll choose your SKU. You've got that model we just went through. If you know you're going to be growing and you're going to have a massive user base, you want the unlimited all-you-can-eat buffet, go E1, go the enterprise route. If not, and you know you're small, you're going to stay small, you're humble, then stick with small business. The way we work out eligibility verification is we essentially maintain a list through TechSoup, and TechSoup automatically validates organizations who qualify. There are some stringent eligibility requirements. Not to say that they're constrictive. They're not going to constrict Canadian nonprofits. However, there are some specific rules, and I encourage you to check those out before you set up a trial so you're not disappointed. They're also available through that same link at the top of the slide. I'm going to close with one final slide, or two final slides, excuse me. We get a lot of questions around what is Microsoft doing to protect my data. There's a lot of content here. I want to just make one point very clear. Across all fundamentals of privacy and security, Microsoft is at the cutting edge of best practices in security and data privacy. And the way I want to characterize this is we're trusted across all sectors you can imagine. If you were to go talk to the CIO today of TD Bank Global, hundreds of thousands of users, they trust Office 365. And we're talking about an organization that is in the financial services sector with huge compliance and regulation impacting their business. And this is an organization who's bet on Microsoft in this area and can trust us to fit inside of the compliance nature of their business and the regulation climate they've got to operate inside of. This is also true for health customers across the world. Specifically in the US, we've achieved HIPAA compliance I know that doesn't necessarily impact Canadian legislation, but you can take it as a real sign that we're committed to working inside of heavily regulatorized and compliance-based businesses and sectors. And if you have more questions here, I'm going to instruct you to do two things. First, we put together a trust center because we know this is important to you, and we don't want to shy away from these issues. And you'll see the link represented on the slide. It's aka.ms/NFP trust. It's got a wealth of information and it describes many of the controls and safeguards we put into the service from the ground up. And you can see from the slide, it's all the way down to physical security up to data privacy. This solution has been engineered to fit inside a bunch of different constraints. We've also hosted inside the presentation a set of security audits and certifications where you can see how Microsoft's represented our ISO certifications that have international implications, our EU Safe Harbor stamp of approval, the HIPAA compliance I mentioned, and all the other third-party certifications we've actually achieved and got the stamp of approval from. They're also documented heavily. But the third thing I'm going to say is, if this is still a concern, we're giving you the option to let us know it's a concern. At the end of this presentation, you're going to get a poll, an additional survey. It's going to launch automatically, and I encourage you to let us know if this is still an issue. If the bulk of the folks in the room think this is still a problem, we're happy to bring in some experts and meet with this audience once again. We're committed to this. We do it from the technology all the way to our implementation here in Canada. And I want you to tell us if we've got stuff to figure out still. And that's your go-dos in that area. That's the things we're asking you to do. Check out the Trust Center. The slide is listed there. We've got the site is listed there. We've got another a site for you to visit that articulates all of our security audits and certifications. I'd encourage you to check that out. Some of those have some reach into Canadian compliance, for example, and some implications for Canadian compliance. And then again, if you are still concerned, you got to let us know. And the way to do that is to answer the post-webinar survey and let us know specifically. I'm going to close, this is just me being excited. You heard me say at the beginning of the presentation that we started this journey about 18 months ago, and I want to see us keep going. This is something that the team at Microsoft Canada is totally galvanized by. We're really excited. You heard me say that this is something that is a solution that TD Bank Global relies on. And I want to see the organizations and nonprofits across the country benefit from that excellence, benefit from that technology at no cost for donation. It's incredible power. It gives you incredible functionality, and I'm super excited to hear what Alden's got to share about their implementation and some of the amazing capabilities the service has provided them. Again, I really appreciate everyone dialing in today. I hope this was useful. Please respond to the survey if we haven't answered all your questions. I'm going to pass the baton now to the next presenter. Sorry, folks, we find that when we click the button on GoToWebinar, it doesn't necessarily move the slide. There we go. Cool. Next one.
Hello there. Hello, everyone. My name is Alden Armstrong. I'm the Senior Manager IT Service Delivery with the Canadian Cancer Society. Second here. Just a bit about who the Canadian Cancer Society is. The Canadian Cancer Society is a national community-based organization of volunteers whose mission is the eradication of cancer and the enhancement of the quality of life of people living with cancer. Our vision for Canada is to create a world where no Canadian fears cancer. It's something that's very near and dear to my heart. I've needed the society, and the society's been there for me. And most of you on the phone have either experienced this or have had people who have gone through this. So it's something that is very close to us. You notice here, though, there's no technology listed in our mission. So we as an IT team, we need to leverage technology to enable the advancement of our mission. The technology cannot be front and center of our mission, and we'll go into that and how Office 365 helped us move along that journey. So what Office 365 services are we as the Canadian Cancer Society using today? And before I go into that, I just want to go over a little bit more about how we're organized, because that is also something that is interesting for a lot of not-for-profits. Even though we're a nationwide organization, we are subdivided into divisions across provincial lines. For the longest time, I supported primarily or only the Ontario division. Some of the things that have changed since the introduction of Office 365 is we've started integrating additional divisions to be able to deliver the service. So, and how many people are we talking about across the country? Well, just a sample size of Ontario. In Ontario, we have between 55 and 65,000 volunteers. And this, why is it fluctuating? As you all know, fundraising season versus mission volunteers and so on and so forth. In Ontario, we have 32 community offices. When we say we are a community-based organization, we are not joking. Our strength is in the communities. From Thunder Bay to Sarnia, we're there. We are part of the community. Part of this expansion that we've been doing is, or integration that we've been doing, is working with our Quebec division as well. And Quebec brings an additional 14 offices that we need to be able to provide services to. So one of the things that we've been rolling out are the Office 365 core services. So from email to OneDrive to SharePoint to the online Office products, and we're doing it all using the Azure Active Directory as the identity management platform. Why? As most charities have learned over the last few years, fundraising revenues aren't always what we would like them to be. And so for all areas in the organization, we're always looking at reducing our cost. But at the same time, we need to enable more communication, more collaboration, more mobility. So the typical, we have to do more with less. We started this Office 365 journey in 2012. And the way we started this journey was really looking at our IT strategy. And we were lucky that our IT director had a strategy, and he was looking beyond just the next 5 years. He was looking to 2020, and what would that look like? How would we be able to change IT into more of a services-based organization that's enabling the organization, as opposed to focusing only on infrastructure? When we looked at that, the cloud services became core to what we need to go to. When we started doing a total cost of ownership evaluation, we were projecting, this was in 2012, a savings of close to $350,000 over 3 years. And a lot of people say, well, no, that's not what you pay for Exchange or what you pay for Office. And you're right. IT has to become smarter. What is our total cost of operating a communications platform, a collaboration platform? What is the total cost of extending it out to more mobility? What is the total cost of getting our volunteers to be a more critical part of organization? We looked at all of that, and we looked at it not just from an IT perspective, but also primarily from a business perspective. So the next slide talks about some of the learnings that we learned during this journey. One of the key things that we found out early on, and we're still learning, by no means are we perfect, by no means has this journey ended, and yes, we have a lot still to learn. In the poll, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in Office 365, it's still foggy. This platform, it has been great for us because it's constantly evolving. There's always new things I log in, and there's a new thing that we can look to roll out. But one of the core pieces that we found out during this journey was communications was key. And not your typical IT communications. If you talk about gigabytes and this, that, and the others for the business, they will tune you out. It has to be frequent, it has to be non-technical, and it has to be through multiple channels. If you send out an all-staff email, it will not be read. I wish it would be, but in most cases it won't be. There are a few people who will, but not a lot. But not just communications. You can speak to it to death and people will eventually tune you out. We also have to talk about the value of Office 365 to our business partners, not just to IT. So when I say it's going to save us money, I don't necessarily say it's going to allow me to avoid buying this storage. They won't understand what the storage means. I will have to say it will allow us to reduce our operating costs with this, or will allow us to reduce that cost, which means that's more money that we can put into mission, that's more money that we can put into research. I had to make sure, or the teams that worked on it, because we had a fairly big team of project managers, one project manager, and several business partners who worked on this. We had to make sure that the language that we used showed that we understood the challenges of the organization, not just today, but going forward, and we were trying to find solutions to help to address it. It wasn't a technical discussion. It was definitely a business discussion about moving to Office 365. The next 2 points goes to just that. We had to actively recruit business champions and executive champions. So what does that mean? From an IT standpoint, we tend to sit in the corner and say, but the CEOs and the VPs don't understand what we're trying to do. And you're right, they don't, nor should they. We had to go out and we had to tease them. We had to put the apps on their phone and say, well, you can't have this after the trial is finished. This is going to go away if you don't have this. We had to show them the benefit. We had to make their lives easier. So anybody that had a tablet, used OneDrive, show them how they could get rid of the binder of papers when they're going to the board meetings. We had to make sure that they became the biggest sellers of this. It wasn't an IT sales pitch where we're telling the business, yes, we're doing this. It was the business saying we needed to be more nimble, we needed to enable collaboration, and by the way, IT has a solution here that we're going to give them an opportunity to implement. So our CEO became one of our greatest champions. So the CEO in the Ontario division, he would get up at all the all-staff meetings. We have monthly all-staff meetings, and we'll talk about Aldwin has his head in the clouds, and or this person has their head in the cloud. And we wouldn't give all the details. We would tease, and we would show the benefits of it. But it was always focused on how Office 365 would help us. Once that was done, we staged a rollout process for Office 365. We didn't just say, here's everything at once. Even though it was enabled all at once, we rolled it out and we communicated in pieces. So I'll take a little bit of time on this one. Back in February 2012, we started the discussion about Office 365 and we needed to go there. The reason for that is, as with most not-for-profits, we have a very long budget cycle that has to be approved by several volunteer boards. So we had to get enough information into the budget for August, September of 2012 so we could start doing something in 2013. It meant that we had to say, here is the immediate solution that we're going to do. We're just going to roll out email. It will allow us to avoid upgrading to the latest and greatest version of Exchange. It avoided the cost of professional services. So everything we were planning to do anyways, we could redirect some of those funds into getting Office 365 set up. People were okay with that. By November 2013, we had the first pilot users on to the Office 365 platform for email, and we found out that people started saying, oh, how comes you can get emails on your phone a little bit easier than I could? Could I be part of that pilot group? And the pilot group grew and grew and grew. By March, we were in general availability. We were rolling out to more and more people. The purpose of our staged rollout wasn't just to ease our pain, because trust me, it did. We didn't have to deal with every aspect of Office 365 at once. It was also to allow for the business to spread the news. It will also allow us to have volunteers going out and say, oh yeah, now I'm a part of the society, I have access to this, and I can see that, and I can now be more empowered than I used to be. It allowed our youth volunteers especially to be a lot more involved. So we staged the rollout. We rolled out one feature, and we would tease at an all-staff meeting. We would build a website about it, say here's an FAQ about that component, and we would slowly roll it out. By September 2014, we were fully rolled out in email. By that time, our CEO was so excited. He was seeing more about it. He started talking to the other divisional CEOs. By then, Manitoba wanted to be a part of the Office 365 suite. Quebec wanted to be a part of the Office 365 suite. We have Alberta and Saskatchewan now wanted to be a part of the Office 365 suite. The challenge for me in IT was we had never worked together as a single organization, not effectively anyways, at the IT level. So we tried to figure out what was the best way to bring all these groups together and do a shared Office 365 tenant as opposed to where we were, which is separate divisional tenants that couldn't see each other. So we worked with certain key partners, and we started leveraging Azure Active Directory. And it allowed us to create forest trust. It allowed us to have people behave as if we were one organization now. Manitoba was moved into Office 365. All of a sudden, their emails were in the global address list that people were seeing in the Outlook. the national CEO was able to send emails to multiple groups, not just to the national office, and then forward on to Ontario to be forwarded out to their group there. The Quebec group wanted to come on board. We did a very similar turnout, and all of a sudden, we had more people who could work better together in this space. So collaboration, this holy grail that the organization wanted to go to, IT was now seen as enabling that by providing a platform that we could slowly bring the divisions together so we can work on shared services. We could start reducing our costs of duplication and the thousands upon thousands of emails that don't need to be there. We could throw up a website. We also rolled out our intranet. So most charities or most organizations will have an intranet or an extranet where they share information, share documents, and so on and so forth. One of the problems with an organization such as ours is that we have a small staff complement and a very large volunteer complement. And our volunteers needed to be a part of our organization, not a separate entity out there. Office 365 allowed us to leverage SharePoint to create a staff and a volunteer portal so that people could collaborate now. Volunteers could go in and double-click on a document and open it up using Office Online. They could now edit. They could work on a document with a staff person internally. They could use Skype to chat with someone. Volunteers were being leveraged a lot more than just those people who are going out and knocking on the doors. You couple that with our push to have more youth involved, and that was a big win for us. We went from 60 cell phones that we issued because we tightly controlled it from a cost perspective. As a charity, we only had 60 cell phones that core people had. At the last check, we were close to 700 mobile devices in Office 365. And we haven't changed how many the organization has issued. So more people are using this. We started rolling out Office, and one of the biggest wins was OneNote, something that not a lot of people talk about. But OneNote in conjunction with OneDrive went absolutely crazy. We had people doing lunch and learn. We had people talking about it, not IT, but the business doing lunch and learns, how they did their objectives in OneNote. They would share OneNote, save it to OneDrive, and the entire team would be able to update the objectives on a different worksheet in real time. They could see what was going on. I say all of that to say this. I've been with this organization for 12 years. I believe in the mission and the vision of the Canadian Cancer Society. I'm not a great researcher. I would love to be a great fundraiser. I'm not. I know technology. And Office 365 allowed me to do what I wanted to do, which is give a solution, provide a solution to the organization that could empower us to better meet our goals. We're not perfect, but it's a platform that has done so much for us from a communication standpoint, from a collaboration standpoint. It is right in line with where we're going strategically, which is instead of operating as a separate entity right across the country, we're coming together more collaboratively across the country. We're able to deliver those services. And a lot of people will think of the CCS as a research firm, or we fundraise for research. But the core of what we are the people. Last year, we did close to 11 million kilometers in trips. What are these trips? One of our core programs is a transportation program where we're driving patients, cancer patients who are going through chemo and everything else, to their appointments and back home. And we're doing this with volunteer drivers, close to 3,000 volunteer drivers. That is the heart of who we are as a Canadian Cancer Society. And that is what IT, and that's what all of us as part of the society need to be focused on, not the infrastructure to be able to enable something that is a must for any organization, which is communication and collaboration. Office 365 has been that gateway to allow us to provide that service and allow us to focus more on what it really means to be the society. So with that, I'd like to say thank you so very much. I'll be available for questions afterwards, but I'd like to now pass it over to Kevin from MessageOps to go forward with how to implement this. Thank you.
And thank you. I've really learned a lot on that, and I think you guys will see that it's not all about the migration to Office 365, but it's also the ability to use all the tools that are in Office 365 and how your end users can benefit from those utilities that are out there. So I'm just going to move on to the slides here. As you can see, MessageOps has migrated almost 2 million users to the Microsoft Cloud. But our our mission is really not getting you there, but it's also optimizing your ability to use Office 365. We've been a Microsoft partner for over 20 years, and we've done all the traditional implementations from, Active Directory through all of the servers and SQL and Exchange and the whole ball of wax. But now we are focused, as you can see, we're the #1 cloud SMB partner of the United States for Microsoft. And, we have really learned our lessons over almost the 4 years that we've been migrating people to the cloud. We've really learned all the lessons that need to be learned, whether you're running Exchange today or GroupWise or really any mail program out there. We have already migrated those type of environments up to Office 365 and beyond. And what I mean beyond, you've heard them talking about SharePoint, and it's usually an application that most people haven't really learned how to use and optimize for their environment. And now Skype for Business, which used to be called Link, is another area where people haven't been able to optimize the utilization of those programs. And really our mission here at MessageOps is to help you get to the cloud, but then once you're there, help your users really take advantage, whether it's on mobile devices, whether it's on their day-to-day desktops, whether it's on tablets or any of the new technologies that are out there, how to help them optimize their experience in Office 365. And the way that we do that is really through some tools that we offer to our really family of users out there for Office 365. Everything from our Exchange Migrator, which just helps take one Exchange environment and move it up to the cloud, through My 365, which is an application that we install or you can install in Outlook that helps your people optimize their Outlook experience. Things like signatures for their emails that can be consistent across your whole environment. The one thing that Exchange gives you is the ability to really look professional to the people that you're reaching out to, whether it's for donations or whether it's to get volunteers. You really want to have that crisp and clean look and feel to your emails. We do a lot of these things as just really a service to the community for our end users. And then help your administrators actually do that adoption of the cloud, because it does take some additional skill sets that you need to have when you're running in Office 365 and the ability to manage the environment in the cloud. And that's where really MessageOps has really been a leader to the community of really helping people now adapt and adjust to not running it on premise, but really taking the burden of all of those updates. I think you heard from the first two speakers, the beauty of Office 365 is you will get the newest technology as it becomes available. And the hardest thing is keeping your IT staff up to par with all these new technologies. And that's the beauty of Office 365 is the hardest part, which is the integration, the upgrade, the upkeep, is all done by Microsoft. And really, they simplify all the management tools, all the ability to now help your end users adopt this new technology and take advantage of it is now really the part that your administrators can focus on. And what we've done is we've actually developed a site called Office365adoption.com. And this will allow your end users, I think you saw as one of the slides, developing step-by-step learning and developing videos and developing reporting tools and things to help your end users take advantage of all the tools that are inside Office 365 is a really big challenge. So what we've done is we've put together this Office365adoption.com site that we can customize for each one of you, put your logo in it, put your own, quick start guides that are adapted for your enterprise, and really help your end users take the most advantage of all the tools that are out there, all the way from Exchange through SharePoint, through OneDrive, through OneNote, and you heard about how important OneNote is, all the way through SharePoint and so on, and really help your end users get the most out of Office 365. Our next steps are Message Ops will perform a cloud assessment. This is a really important part of your migration to the cloud. You know, the one thing that we've learned over the millions of users that we've moved to the cloud is you only want to do this once. You only want to take that step into the cloud once. And this cloud assessment is normally a $1,000 offer. We're going to do it for the nonprofits for the first 15 for free at no charge. All you have to do is respond to the webinar survey that you're looking for a free assessment, and we'll do it. We also have another webinar next week that will really go into details on all the tools and all the options that are available to you in Office 365. And if you respond to the survey, we'll send you a link just like this one to that webinar that's available to you next week. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Nicola so that we can open it up for questions from the group.
Hi, sorry, just give us a moment.
Nicola?
So a big thank you to, yes, hi. So a big thank you to all our guest speakers for their informative presentation. I'd like to take this time to ask a few questions from our audience. So if you've not entered your questions for our speakers, please do so now by using the questions chat box in your GoToWebinar panel. So our first question is for Jamie and is actually asked by multiple attendees. So a lot of us have to ensure our data is stored on a server located in Canada. If the data is stored in the cloud, where is the data stored? And if it's not in Canada, would you consider creating a data center in Canada for the future?
Cool. So, I mean, this one's a little bit complicated because I think we find ourselves in this situation where, you know, we'll use the term data sovereignty and leaving data residency in Canada as an umbrella term to describe, you know, many requirements. So two things I'm going to say. One is, and you can look this up online, Microsoft is actually committed to building a Canadian data center for Office 365. And that means that any data at rest, you know, that you could have data at rest in Canada once that service becomes available. We haven't released the time frame of that investment, but the data center is being built right now, and you can expect from us in the next, you know, maximum 18 months, Office 365 available on Canadian soil, where data residency and specifically data at rest is a reality for Office 365. So that's the first piece. The second thing I'm going to say is, you know, that's a great complement to our already robust security and privacy controls. The link I provided earlier contains a wealth of information that describes many of the controls and safeguards that we've implemented in the commercial services, the Office 365 services. And ultimately what it's going to do, especially if you check out our security, our certifications and our audits that we've achieved, it's going to really uncover, okay, is there an issue here? Now, on top of all those internal, on top of our investments on building a local data center, on top of the already robust security and privacy controls, there's also the option, and Alwyn didn't talk about this at length, but there's also the option of having a hybrid implementation. And what that often looks like is both technology and policies that say to your staff, if data must reside in Canada, we can have it on in a local machine, whether that's hosted in a data center that you operate or a third-party data center that's on Canadian soil. There is that option. And I think that I want to highlight is the services that you saw demonstrated, both what Aldwin has implemented at the Canadian Cancer Society and what are available as a donation today, unlock the ability for you to sync data across both your local, hosted or on-premise or co-located SharePoint or Exchange instances, or in the cloud. And so, for example, you could have a situation where a certain number of users, let's say staff versus volunteers as an example, can't have any data that they control live outside of a local data center. And data at rest has to happen in Canada. And for those situations, it's very easy to have a user created within the Exchange service that only lives on your Exchange service on Canadian soil. And then, you know, the adverse is true. You could have all your volunteers who aren't maybe sharing sensitive data that isn't perhaps subject to such compliance and regulation, or they're being scaled up and down at no cost in the Microsoft Office 365 cloud. And that's one example, one scenario where, again, you have the choice. You can go down the path of saying, I want to have a hybrid implementation, and that means that both technology and processes can be put in place that help you stay compliant with whatever regulatory constraint you fall inside of. But I want to reiterate one final point. I know Alwyn has a point too. I just want to make sure I land this. Please answer the webinar survey, because we will go deeper on this subject. I'm by no means an expert. And we want to answer these questions and have a dialogue with you guys if there are things we need to both consider in both our development of the Canadian Data Center, our development of the service, but also point you in the direction of the things we've learned on helping, again, Canadian health institutions or the banks in Canada move to Office 365. But I'm going to push it to Alwyn, because Alwyn has got some great comments on this area.
So from a charity standpoint, this is a statement that has been made for an incredibly long time. And the Canadian Cancer Society, being who we are, this is something that we've always hold to be a truth. However, during our journey, we had a lot of investigation. We brought in security professionals and so on, and we looked at what is the legislation state. And it turns out we didn't have that requirement to keep everything on Canadian soil. And in fact, when we dug a little bit deeper, we found that a lot of the online fundraising platforms, so the platforms that are so key to us, from Luminate Online and so on and so forth, the majority of those were actually hosted in the US. And so when we started asking, if our donor data can be hosted in the US, are we saying that our emails are more private than that? And so it took a really long time for us to come to the realization that it was a truth among charities, because it was the simple truth. It was Homeland Security was coming to get us. And after we started actually bringing in security professionals to look at what the legislation actually stated and how we could actually still be secure, it turns out we didn't have that residency requirement, and it allowed us to move forward. So I know it's something that's often repeated in charity circles, that it has to be kept on Canadian soil, but it depends on the charity. It depends on what you're doing. Do not just accept it. Look into it, and also look at where your other services are, your fundraising platforms and so on.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Our second question is actually from Vanessa for Aldwin. So I see the Cancer Society uses E1 and E3. Could you explain why and how?
The Canadian Cancer Society uses E1 and E3. E1 is that donated suite of products, and it's fantastic for volunteers who want to be able to come onto SharePoint, access their documents, work on their documents, and so on and so forth. It's also great for the summer students who come into the office. They need to get email. They need to be fully empowered, but they're not using the full suite of Office products. We used E3 for people who wanted the latest version of Office, people who wanted Office on 5 devices, so people who would work from home, people who wanted it on their laptop, people who would want it on their desktop. So we didn't by default roll out E3. E3 is really for people who wanted some advanced features. The other benefit of E3 is around some of the advanced security. So we just talked about data residency. Some of the advanced security features are things such as data loss prevention, information rights management, which it was an interesting piece, because these are all things that we always wanted to implement from a security standpoint, but we couldn't implement it because of the cost. Now I can set an information rights management policy that states, I can send you an email, but you can't forward it to anybody, you can't print it, and by the way, it's going to delete itself after a couple of days. So this was phenomenal from our privacy office standpoint, because some of those same concerns that we had about keeping things forever, the retention policies, we were able to implement. So the difference between the E1 is the core of what we need to do. So if you want just email, SharePoint, OneDrive, you're okay with the version of Office that you have, or you just want to use the web version, that's why we used it. So we have approximately 1,400 subscribers on that, versus people who want more advanced, full version of Office, the latest and greatest on their desktop. They want to take advantage of some of the higher level security. We have approximately 335 licenses of those, so that's the separation. People always enter the tenancy using E1, and as their needs grow, we apply the E3 licenses. So it's not set in stone. We can grow and shrink that as we need to.
Okay, thank you so much. That's actually all the time we have for today. So I want to thank you again to our wonderful guest speakers for helping us learn more about Office 365 for nonprofits. And I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out of your lunch hour to join us. Just a reminder that the webinar recording, presentation slides, and recap will be posted on our website next week, and we'll email you once all the resources are available online. And please also fill out the brief post-webinar survey that will launch after this session if you have